Entrepreneurial Center. And normally we have a luncheon the fourth Wednesday of the month, and we get to meet everyone in person. But due to situations, we're having this video conferencing events, which we are going to have them every other week, and we're going to have speakers of interest to the business community here, which is what we're doing today. First of all, I want to tell everyone that we are going to be recording this meeting, so be aware of that. And before we get going, I'd like to have everyone introduce themselves. You'll just have a few seconds to do so, your name, the company that you represent, and how are you acquainted with the SBEC? And that way we'll know who's in the room. So Linda, we're going to start with you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Linda Artiano. I'm an attorney in Torrance. I'm an employment law attorney. I'm known as a lawyer for the employer, so you'll know what side of the fight I'm on. I've worked and I've spoken at the South Bay Entrepreneurial Center before. I believe it may have always been at the request of Yolanda or Gary Polk.
Okay.
So I've known Yolanda for many, many years.
Thank you, Linda. Mark and then Brett.
Hi, I'm Mark Hiraidy. I'm a securities attorney. I serve as an off-site general counsel to businesses focusing on corporate and securities issues and compliance. My former law partner of over 20 years was Lee Pedalon, who was one of the co-founders of the SBEC. And I'm trying to fill his big footsteps. And so I serve on the SBEC's board and am a specialist mentor.
Thank you. Pat?
Hi, everyone. Patrick Stacy. I am the coordinator of cohort relations at the SBEC, which means I have the great pleasure of working and interviewing all the entrepreneurs who are looking to join our incubator and accelerator program. I've been working with the organization for about 8 years as a lead mentor. My background is as a chief financial officer for companies in the $10 to $70 million a year range, and I'm currently a fractional CFO for different companies in the Southern California, the largest of which is Rock and Wagner Bakery, which is a wholesale commercial bakery located in Mid-City, LA.
Thank you, Pat. Jim and then Bill.
Good morning, everybody. Jim Artiano. I'm a lawyer here in Torrance also. My emphasis of my practice right now is in general business matters and estate planning, but I also have background in litigation related to those same matters. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you, Jim. Bill?
Yeah, hi, Bill Gage, Gage Advisory Services. I am a fractional CFO here in the South Bay, currently working with a company much larger than my target range. My association to the SBEC is through Matt at this point. I would like to talk more, Yolanda, about becoming a mentor. I think we've met before and just need to get some time on the schedule.
Yeah, let's do it after this meeting. We'll set something up. Bill.
Thanks.
Thank you. Angela?
Hi, I'm Angela Rubian. I'm a mentor. I specialize in graphic design, web design, web usability, and visual branding.
Thank you, Angela. Will?
Good afternoon, everyone. Will Daines, I'm a certified financial planner here at Torrance. My affiliation with the SBC is I work with Patrick on the cohort selection. So fielding new possible applicants, it's always a lot of fun to hear some really great creative ideas and kind of forward them along to the group as we kind of filter through them. And then I had an interesting experience probably like 8 to 10 years ago of actually pitching a business idea to the SBC as part of the pitch night. That business is still a going concern, which is cool. So anyway, Will Daines, financial planner.
Thank you, Will. Rochelle?
Hi, everybody. My name's Rochelle. I have a company called Earthly, and I am a lucky cohort. I get to work with the SBEC as a cohort, and I am in the incubator program. And just a quick heads up, I might have to hop off early. My son has his final project today for school via Zoom. So if I leave, that's why.
Thank you, Rochelle. Jason?
Hey guys, Jason. I run Nest of Entertainment, which is a nightlife events company. Currently, obviously, we're on a long pause. I'm also in the mentor program. I'm a mentee, and again, I'm pausing that for now, just until events and bars and nightclubs open, and then I'll get back to it. But I've been doing coming to these luncheons probably over a year now, and they've always been really great.
Thank you, Jason. Alice?
Hi, Alice Taylor. I'm on the SBEC board. Background is in business development and grant writing. Relentless recruiter to these events. And my day job is with the Tall Ships in San Pedro LA Maritime Institute. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Merv?
Yeah, Merv Vidad with Relive International. We're a food science company specializing in nutritional epigenetics and essential nutrition.
Thank you, Merv. And last but certainly not least, Matt Golding, who is a mentor here at the SBC, and he is what I call a marketing maven, and also my right-hand person currently. So Matt, I'm going to have you take over the meeting.
Actually, thank you. I think there are a couple more that you missed, Marietta and Benita.
So
Brett.
Marietta
and Brett.
And Brett. So let's go.
Brett.
Minor detail, right? So Brett, let's go with you.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Brett Smith. I'm a business banker. I work for American Business Bank that's headquartered here in Los Angeles. I've been in this business for 20 years now. Time flies. I'm a senior banker within the bank. Classically deal with companies that are doing annual sales between 10 and $200 million. I'm also one of the credit authorities of the bank.
Thank you. Marietta?
Hi, this is Marietta Fong. I am a retired CPA, still an MBA, and doing some occasional consulting projects here and there, which I'm enjoying and very much enjoying retirement. Been working with the SBEC as a specialist mentor for a number of years, and now doing some general mentorship, which I'm enjoying very much.
Thank you, Marietta. And Bonita, nice to see you. She there?
Hello, hi.
Hi, Bonita. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everybody. So my name is Bonita. I'm an ambassador with the SBEC. And as a profession, I have a financial services agency where we help people get out of debt, do retirement planning, and life insurance.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else, Matt, before I go to you?
Or Brent Dickstein?
Oh, yeah, Brent Dickstein. Brett?
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Hi, hi everyone. My name is Brent Dickstein. I'm with the Small Business Development Center for the LA Regional Network. I'm part of the Access to Capital team, and we support businesses typically in good markets to try to identify resources for financial solutions to help them grow or start up a business. Right now, we've been supporting companies primarily with trying to figure out how to navigate all of the disaster loan solutions.
Great, Brett. Welcome and thank you for coming. And I'd like to be able to talk to you offline later on.
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Matt.
Roger, are you there? I thought I saw.
Yeah.
You.
Sorry, Roger.
Want to give a quick introduction?
You need to unmute, Roger.
Am I on now?
Yep.
Now we got you.
Okay. These icons are throwing me off. I'm Roger Ignan. I am an advisor for SBEC, and my past is as a serial entrepreneur.
Is that it?
That's it. I've just been on a Zoom meeting for 2.5 hours. I'm totally worn out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
If that's okay. All right.
There's one more Pat. Is that Pat Sant or is that just
I
Pat?
think Pat,
Stacy just.
Stacy has done twice, I think.
Hi, here I am.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, Pat.
Hi, how are you?
Introduce
How's
yourself.
everybody?
Sorry.
Good to see you all. I'm Pat Sant from Canister Brands. We provide premium topicals for infused CBD topicals for aches, pains, inflammation, as well as I'm the marketing, I'm on the board of the SBEC for marketing, and I love it. So I've not been able to join many of these, and I'm really excited that I get to, but I've got a few meetings that are going to interfere with this, so I may have to jump off early, but I'm really looking forward to hearing of the presentation. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Pat.
And I guess I'll wind things up. My name is Matt Golding. I'm a mentor at the SBEC. I've been a mentor for the past couple of years. My background is in marketing and brand building, strategic planning, strategic marketing plans, and helping small to mid-market sized companies with all of their general marketing efforts. My business is Storyline Strategy, and it's a pleasure seeing everyone and helping out with this Zoom format. So I welcome everyone. This is a unique day, and we have some great guests. We've got Brett and Linda. So I'm going to do a brief introduction. They're both going to give a couple minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, however they see fit, to kind of give an overview of how they're seeing their respective arenas and some of the challenges that might be facing entrepreneurs in general, especially during this COVID-19 environment that we're living in. And then it'll be opened up for some questions, some of which I've already pre-received, and I'll shoot them to both Brett and to Linda. But without any further ado, let me just do a little bit more of an introduction for our two great guests. Brett Smith is a first vice president of American Business Bank and has 20 years experience in the commercial banking industry. Brett is a senior commercial banker, as well as one of the bank's senior credit authorities, whose focus is to work with established locally owned businesses with sales of 10 to 200 million. He works with a variety of industries, but focuses primarily on the food industry, subsectors of manufacturing, and the construction industry. Brett has a close relationship with his clients, which includes being a trusted resource on complex financial matters, best practices, and long-term planning. Brett's been a mentor with the SBEC and has been a good friend of the group. And so I welcome Brett. Linda and her husband, Jim. Linda is co-head of the firm Artiano and Associates and practices in the area of employment law, compliance, and litigation. She's known as the lawyer of the employer. Linda represents company owners who have 1 to 200 employees, ranging from manufacturing, telecommunications, retail, professional services, and emergency services companies to nonprofit companies, online retail, and individual food service clients who are located throughout Southern California. Her firm is one of LA's South Bay's premier law firms, which practice mainly in the area of business law and civil litigation, including business litigation, employment law, and litigation, as well as estate and succession planning and family law. So both have quite the resume. She's also, as she mentioned, has helped us out at the SBC and spoken. So we give a warm welcome to both of them. So I guess I'm going to throw it first to you, Linda. Just maybe a 5-minute overview of what you've seen, what you've been experiencing. What do you think our audience, who are small entrepreneurial clients, that they need to be aware of in this crazy day and age? And then we'll drill down with we'll go to Brett, and then we'll drill down with some more specific questions.
Sure. Thank you very much, Matt. Really great introduction. And thank you, Marietta, for the clapping. I always love when people clapping. This is not a format that's working for me. I need a lot of, positive feedback. But I'm happy to do it because I can sit in my office and go to a lot of different places. So the one thing, it was drilled home to me the very first week, on I think it was Thursday, March 19th, the governor announced that our state was basically closing down. And he was speaking, sorry, there's somebody beeping. at 6:30, and by 6:45, I had 3 emails from clients wondering what is going on. So the next week, I went on, probably like all of you, a lot of webinars, and one of the first ones I went to was one that is just for employment law attorneys. We were not even a week into COVID-19, and it was a meeting of all employment law attorneys, the plaintiffs, those who represent plaintiffs, as well as defendants. And the plaintiffs bar, the group of attorneys that represents the plaintiffs, the employees, they were already looking at ways that employers might be doing things wrong. And it was like, are you kidding? Like, our whole world has changed. So don't expect that you're gonna get a buy. You will a little bit, but please don't count on it through this COVID-19. Eventually the dust will settle and your employees will be your former employees, and their attorneys will do their job and ask them every possible thing you could be doing wrong. Never assume that because you're a startup or you're a small company that your employee won't go after you. For any employee, you are their employer, whether you have 200 people working for you or 1 person working for you. They will take it on as seriously as if you were the big employer. So please don't forget that. Don't fall into the sense that, gee, I don't have a lot of money. They will go after you even if you're on the way to file bankruptcy. They will try to get something, from you. So I think, boy, that sounds like a downer. I'm always the downer speaker wherever I go. I always scare people. Are you kidding me? But, it is true. It's forewarned is forearmed. So make sure that you're aware of the other questions that come up. Should I keep going or should I get into
Well, let's have Brett do a little bit of a talk and then we can drill down with some questions.
Well, I can, this is Brett. I can kind of add on from my chair as a banker to businesses, Linda's comments, which are just dead on, especially in this COVID environment. Companies are being very conscientious and for good reason in how to lay off or furlough people. And then, of course, everybody has heard about the PPP program, which is the dead center of what I do. So, sorry, that wasn't me. I don't know who that was. Somebody can mute their phone. Thank you. And then also, obviously, rehiring those employees as well. So, yeah, the human resource element of this is very, very sensitive. And there's a lot of strategy around it. But in my world, specifically to being a banker, when round 1 of the PPP program occurred, I spent 7 days a week, honestly, 10 to 12-hour days, if not more, providing loans to my clients. And so the challenge that I see from the smaller enterprise is, where can I get capital, especially now because COVID hit? My revenues could be down by various degrees. And can I get a PPP loan? And I can empathize that, getting direction about that could be challenging because obviously the media was reporting some banks that they weren't doing it, or they were just doing it for their bigger clients. And so that's one thing that from sitting in my chair that I think can probably be a concern to the audience if they've been trying to get a PPP loan, let alone even understanding the rules of the program or even some of the gray areas of the program that exist to this day. One of the elements for those who are applying or have received a loan is to understand the forgiveness element of a PPP loan, which, I would say that the experts, if you will, on SBA subject matter, the answer is there isn't an answer for everything regarding forgiveness. So there's been a lot of work by my clients to really, understand the program and keep up on it, let alone just running the business day to day. So that's a primary issue. And then aside from the PPP program, for early startup sort of enterprises, and I would categorize that as companies that are in business less than 3 years, or maybe even at the business plan stage, what is my source of capital right now? So that's something I can talk more about as we go.
Great, thank you. And I forgot to mention, if you're not talking, please everyone mute themselves and then you can chime in. And if there are questions at the end or while we're going on, you can either put them in the chat box or you can raise your hand using the icon and we'll try to get to you. But I'm going to start with a question that I think might be best for the SBC community and for some of our cohorts. Just in general, given the size of some of our cohorts and what their experience may or may not be, it's sometimes they don't know what they don't know in terms of how to go about securing a banker or a lawyer and what the issues are. So maybe from the stage of an overall perspective, but maybe specifically in this day and age of COVID-19, for someone who's starting out, who's a new business owner, an entrepreneur trying to grow, and might not have the relationship either with a lawyer or a banker, what do they need to know? So I'm going to start with you, Brett, and then I'll pass it to you, Linda.
Yeah, no, I can give a couple of thoughts. So this is actually something I was talking to Patrick Stacey about just earlier today. And, you know, in my experience in the banking industry, I think one of the things that probably a lot of early stage entrepreneurs are wondering about is having a relationship with a banker, right? And what, like, is that something I need to do? And if so, how do I do it? And, you know, so I would say that's an excellent question, by the way, if you're wondering about that. And I think ultimately you do want to have a relationship with a banker, but you'll find me to be very candid. I think our industry has changed over the years. And so to be able to find, let's say the stereotypical commercial banker that a business may have had, you know, 30 or 50 years ago isn't necessarily available to everybody like it used to be, in my opinion. And so, but on a positive note, I think that in terms of getting advice about your business, how to bank your business properly, and even getting into the technical aspects, which are really, really important for a business, is having a very good business plan and doing projections, financial projections on a profit and loss basis, and even gaining the competency to understand doing a balance sheet projection potentially. So an organization, and so you may have gotten that from a banker at an early stage company, you know, maybe 30 or 40 years ago. And, you know, to be honest, maybe it's somewhere around here today, but in my observation, it seems to be somewhat inaccessible. But on a positive note, there are what are called SBDCs that exist. And there's one in Hawthorne, for example, called the South Bay SBDC. It's part of the Small Business Administration, and they can help entrepreneurs in a somewhat of a different and same way as our organization does here at the South Bay Entrepreneurial Center. And they could help people establish those things to potentially apply for like a microloan through the SBA, which I can talk more about in a bit. But those are kind of, so I think it is important to find that relationship with a bank, but I think engaging like an SBDC can be very fruitful. And on a positive note too, in terms of our banking industry, technology is outstanding throughout the banking industry, and a lot of large banks, you know, have a lot of different products available to small businesses, accepting credit card, aside from the general bank accounts. But getting a loan at an early stage company may be difficult to get from a traditional bank. And so going through basically the SBA organization, I'll call it, to try to get a micro loan or a community advantage loan is going to be your option.
Great.
Anyway, those are a couple of my thoughts.
So Linda or Jim, same question from your side. For someone who doesn't know what they don't know, what's the best way to engage and when to engage with an attorney just for business, overall business matters?
Go ahead.
I think early on is the best, because there's some assumptions people make, especially when they're hiring employees and they try to do this independent contractor thing so they can save money. And also making sure that you have an entity that is structured, whether it's an LLC or a corporation. And just being aware of the fact that you can't use this business, if you're going to set up this entity to protect yourself from liability, individually, then you need to make sure you don't use your business as your personal piggy bank for your personal stuff. You got to keep those lives separate. And I think from a starting standpoint, those are really important to start up with. And also understanding that in talking with the lawyer about, insurance, what things do I need insurance-wise to protect me from my business? Again, you're trying to protect yourself from personal liability. I mean, you may get sued, but your entity, your business will be sued if it's insured and it's a type of claim that's covered by your insurance, then that'll take care of it. But you need to be aware of what's not insured when you're setting up your business so that you can, again, try to protect yourself in that regard. And those are all the important things. So sitting down with the lawyer for an hour or two and paying the money for that consultation is worth a lot more money than what you're going to pay later on if you don't, you try not to spend the money up front. It'll save you thousands more in the long run. And I think that's what the problem with a lot of people, they say, well, we're going to save money. We're not going to spend money on the lawyer. But if you get the knowledge of those things up front, then at least you can pick and choose then what you're going to be, doing with your business, and also, when you need to go back to the lawyer for things that you need.
When is the best time to do that? Is it
before you set up the company, before you start? It really is important. I mean, you can talk to your banker, your mentors, and everybody else and do your business plan, but then you sit down with the lawyer and say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And at least they can discuss the, exposures you have there. So you have that understanding, as you're setting up your business.
Okay.
I'm just going to interject. I think that there's a third part. I think there's four main parts that a company has to be thinking of: the lawyer, the banker, your insurance broker, your insurance guy, but your CPA. Find out if you want to set up an LLC or whatever entity. Make sure you're asking your CPA, tell them what your position is, what your financial position is, and how you want to structure this, and ask for their advice. Attorneys are the ones that can set it up for you, but you really need to make sure that the attorney and the CPA or your accountant are working together on it, because I know that Jim has interviewed a number of clients who wanted to set up a corporation or the one form or a partnership. And the question is, what does your CPA tell you? We didn't talk to him. You need to make sure that CPA is also involved in the process.
Yeah, excellent point, because that's very important, whether they're setting up a business or, even if the client's got an existing business and they want to do some estate planning. A lot of times they want to do some things that the CPA has to be commenting on, and they have to be part of that team immediately.
And Linda, can you just shed some light on the employment part of that? If and when you start getting employees or contractors or any?
Sure. Number one, I think that a lot of people are aware pre-COVID, the big news in California was that almost every worker in California is now assumed to be an employee, not an independent contractor. So you have to really make sure that the worker that you are having work for you is really an independent contractor if you're going that route. There's no other way to do it than to do a case-by-case specific analysis. It's almost always going to be an employee. There are a few instances, such as if you are a restaurant or you're a chef and you need somebody to do your books. So that bookkeeper is most likely an independent contractor because you're not in the business of. But if you get bigger and that person starts handling your books and they're your full-time employee, you better know when they turned into that employee, because if they get to be your former employee, number one, your former employee is a very different person than your current employee. Your former employee will have an attorney who will ask all the questions on how you've been paid and everything like that. So make sure you know if they're an independent contractor or an employee. And I will give one warning, because I do see this. If you have a worker who comes in and wants to be paid in cash under the table, and you're tempted to do that because, let's face it, it's cheaper, you don't have all the payroll taxes to pay, you don't have the workers' comp. Number one, that's a problem. If that employee falls down, you don't have workers' comp coverage for them. If they get hurt, they can get hurt in a desk setting. They can trip over a chair mat, something like that. Just because you're not in manufacturing doesn't mean there aren't hidden ways they can get hurt. And when that happens, if you don't have workers' comp insurance, not only will you have fines and all of that, but you're going to be personally responsible for that person's injuries. So it's as if you had workers' comp insurance. So it's workers' comp right now, especially for office workers, is not that expensive. And I would definitely make sure that you have that coverage. You can even have it for independent contractors in California. And if they are just desk people, office people, I would go ahead and ask my carrier to cover the independent contractors for you also. Kind of along with Jim, he covered a bunch of the things. Also, so watch out if an employee wants to be paid in cash, because they're going to have some proof that they worked for you, and you're not going to have any proof that you paid them. And they're going to be able to go down quite easily and get all the back money. You don't have any proof that you paid them any wages, and they have the proof. There's going to be in emails, there's going to be phone calls, they're going to be able to describe something. It's not the place to go ahead and try to, save a few dollars here and then.
Got it.
Cover enough? Do you want me to go into the specific questions? Where do you want to go?
Well, I'll throw them out at you. So we did get a question earlier, and it says legal fees are enormously expensive to most early stage entrepreneurs. How should an entrepreneur go about finding an attorney that is the right fit for their business, and something that they can afford?
I'll take that question. I think minimum they should interview at least 2 attorneys, if not 3. And again, there's an expense associated with that, but I believe that the information and the experience of dealing with the attorneys is really a great for a long-term practice in terms of them understanding that they have to think about certain things once they explain what their business is about. And they may also get different ideas. The advice may not be that different, but some attorneys may have better business backgrounds, even though they're a business lawyer than others, more practical experience, okay? And so I think that's important. And then in terms of the fees that they're gonna pay, like to set up their company and all that, they shouldn't be afraid to think outside the box a little bit, which is maybe have the fee reduced, but maybe provide some type of a underlying equity interest. The lawyer could have an interest in the business, but you got to make sure that the lawyer then gives you the conflict waiver and all those disclosures that go with it, because now you're doing business together a little bit. Not so much doing business, but you have an investor that is a lawyer. So there's a little bit of, that's one idea, and it's one thing that, we've looked at times for clients in terms of how to minimize the expense they got to put out of their pocket now to have us do work versus, us getting something down the line later on as some equity interest. And it could be, again, non-voting, very restricted, so that the lawyer doesn't interfere with the business, but yet can reap some benefit from what they've provided in services and get a benefit later on down the line when the client's business is successful.
How important is it to have that attorney have industry experience in whatever the entrepreneur is endeavoring in?
Well, I think it's good to have that. I mean, that's probably most important. Depending on the industry, it's not absolutely necessary, but I think depending on what, the business is, if it's a restaurant, they're going to have lease issues. So then you got the lease, you got the business set up, and you got the employees. I mean, that basically gets you 3 different attorneys that if they stay specialized that you need to help yourself out. And so I think you got to look at the attorney that has a little broader experience, can jump from one to the other, but yet if they aren't experts, they have the ability to bring someone into the team if necessary. So I think that's how you have to look at it in terms of what is their broad background, especially when you're on a smaller scale. When you get bigger, then you're going to have an attorney for, your dealings with the landlord versus your regular business lawyer versus an estate lawyer, which may be working on succession planning for the, for the company. And then your employment lawyer, is pretty specialized and really has to be part of the team, no matter who else is setting up the company.
And for someone who is a cohort or a wannabe cohort, or a mentor who's trying to help a cohort, how does one best find an attorney? Is it just through a networking group, or is it word of mouth?
Well, from my experience, word of mouth is the best recommendation, because then at least I got someone that's dealt with that lawyer and they feel comfortable with them, and maybe you'll feel comfortable with them as well. Searching on the internet, obviously if you're going outside of the area, then you got to do it that way. But you can find lawyers that are competent in going through Westlaw or lawyers.com. But I think really the best way is to get a recommendation from a few people, and then prepare a list, and then work through the list, either with a phone conversation to start, and then a follow-up, meeting with the lawyer on your specific issues.
I will say that a lot of we get a lot of referrals from CPAs and insurance people. You're going to have those in your group, anyways, of advisors. So ask them. A lot of times they might come up with the same, names, but I would go ahead and start there when you're looking for recommendations versus your neighbor who may have a totally different need.
So, Brett, I'm going to throw a similar question to you. We've got an independent question that said, for banking, the questions to ask when building banking relationships. How do you start building a banking relationship?
Well, I think that first off, you want to have a good understanding of who you have been dealing with at your bank, and if they are a dedicated person to that, at least in part of their job is to deal with business owners. And so if you're just dealing in the branch environment with a teller, generally speaking, they will get you referred into a specialist that may work within the branch or maybe would visit the branch. So that would be the first step, is to make sure that you're talking to the right person in the organization. So ask that question if you haven't already been acquainted with them. And then if your relationship historically has just been making deposits and seeing if you can get a hold lifted on a check, for example, for availability, things like that, but you want to start to migrate the conversation into the need for capital, then part of that is, and when you get to that point, which could be a little while with a traditional bank, as I kind of alluded to earlier, but the SBA channel is within that, and banks do. Let's say that you're banking at, let's say, Bank of America, Wells, or Chase. They do small SBA loans, and so if you get into that situation where you may qualify for it, you're going to want to really have a good the part of building that relationship with the banker is to be able to provide them a good financial package. And so traditionally that's going to be, if your business is less than 3 years in business, whatever business tax returns you have, interim financial statements. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you're going to go have a conversation with the banker in August. You want to come in there with a profit and loss statement of your business and a balance sheet that's maybe through the end of May, for example, and coupled with tax returns from the previous year, your personal financial statement, because if you're going to ask for a loan, undoubtedly, you're going to need to personally guarantee that loan. So part of that is just having that good financial package so the banker can look at it and understand what they're lending to. And the best way for them to first look at it is to look at the actual numbers, the financial information. But beyond there is that you want to engage with a banker that takes an interest in understanding your business. And I think on your end, you're going to want to make sure you can not only know, but articulate what your plan for the business is in terms of its growth and your capital needs to get there. In other words, let's say that your business does $500,000 in sales annually. right now, and you want to grow your business to do $1 million in sales in the next, let's say, 3 years. And so really kind of thinking through, are you going to have enough money to buy inventory, to collect any accounts receivable if that's applicable to you, to buy equipment if you need to do that, let alone pay payroll. And so as you grow, you want to say, okay, well, it looks like, excuse me, it looks like I may need a $50,000 line of credit or something of that nature, and versus not knowing kind of what your capital needs are, or and of course, at the end of the day, you don't know, and bankers understand, if your plan is to do $1 million in sales in 3 years, they understand you can't control everything. You can have a strategy around it to grow. It may not be attained, right? But that's understood. A lot of entrepreneurs get very concerned with giving bankers an expectation of what they're going to do in writing, because they're afraid that the banker's going to kind of penalize them just because they didn't meet all of their projections. And so those projections or their plans are going to really help feed the conversation with you and the banker. And so, yeah, I think having that ongoing dialogue with them. And I think the overall message is, when you have a meeting with your banker, be prepared, and really, as I was hopefully clear before, is, being prepared to tell them what they want to know, which is going to be seeing the hard numbers of the business historically, and what your plans are, and how you're going to grow sales, and how you're going to do things maybe differently in the future to achieve your goals. Doing those things in a very clear and concise manner with a banker will go a long way to establishing a relationship with them, and being very open to listening to their advice and asking a lot of questions. So that's my overall view on that.
Okay. One follow-up question, and this probably could be a whole workshop on it in and of itself, but if you're a small business owner and you're looking to raise capital, there are a lot of different options out there: angel investing,
right,
equity, crowdfunding, banking. How do you help, as a mentor, how do you help that business owner try to figure out which is the best way to go first?
Well, yeah, I don't know the statistics, but I think I've heard in the past, the number one reason that small businesses won't continue to evolve and survive is because of a lack of liquidity or a lack of capital. That's the big problem. So I empathize with that problem. And so the answer to the question is, yeah, Matt, you're right. An angel investor or giving up equity, right, is one of the options. And then, obviously through their sweat and tears and effort in running the business, owners aren't going to be wanting to do that unless that equity partner can provide real value besides the money to help them grow. They would much prefer to take on a debt of some sort to help them grow. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, there are a couple of well, let me back up and say, so everybody's heard of SBA, okay? Well, there's a lot of different programs within SBA, most of which that get publicized in the news are for big established companies that are doing $2-3 million in sales a year. And they get what are traditionally called an SBA Express loan, which is up to $350,000, or a real estate loan under what's called the 504 program, where they can buy a building, right? And obviously, companies that have been around for a year or 2 or 3 aren't ready for any of that. So what the SBA does have, and not all SBAs participate in this, and most importantly is that traditional banks like where I work don't provide these programs. Okay, there's called the microloan program, which are loans between $5,000 and $50,000. And that's offered. I actually shared information with Matt before the call, some contact information. AMPAC, which is what's called a CDC, that's located over in Grand Terrace here in Southern California, provides these microloans. And they do this. They do this for companies that are maybe been around for 2 or 3 or 4 years, but they also, on a case-by-case basis, will provide startup capital under this program for very early stage companies. And so the key, and so Matt will share the contact information of Marty Wong, who works for AMPAC. That's one of the big programs that's out there for these early stage companies. And just to kind of, in case you're curious, so that program, like I said before, is between $5,000 and $50,000. It's a fixed rate. The term is up to 6 years in terms of repayment source. It's meant for short-term working capital. And what that means, and I apologize if that's common knowledge to you, but just to be clear, so working capital is going to be to help you buy inventory, help you, because obviously when companies grow, they need to buy the inventory in order to sell the product. So that's growth capital. And also they may be extending terms to clients like accounts receivable. May say, well, you know, I'll deliver these goods to you today, but you owe me next week, or you owe me in 30 days. Well, that creates a cash flow shortfall, and that's part of the purpose of these loans. So, and even let's say that you are not at a business operation stage where you're maybe 1 or 2 months in and you don't have business tax returns, they'll simply take your 3 years personal tax returns, but you're obviously going to want to have a very well thought out business plan in writing to describe it, something they can read, in addition to a 24-month profit and loss projection for the business. So that's one of the programs. And then there's a second one called the Community Advantage Program, and that's also under the SBA, and that's offered by another CDC organization. And a CDC is basically an organization that's sort of deputized by the SBA to provide SBA loans. They're all over Southern California. Some of them really stick to dealing with larger small businesses, if you will, but this one I mentioned, Marty Wong, they're very much participants in this microloan program. And the Community Advantage Program, California statewide CDC, which is here in Southern California, all is a participant in that program. Now, I'm going to share this information through Matt to you guys, but if you're interested in getting that program right now, it's actually, they're not doing them right now because they're focused on providing PPP loans to small businesses. So if you guys are looking at needing a loan here in the next 2 or 3 months and want to start the process, my suggestion is to reach out to Marty Wong, and you'll get his contact information later today. But those are 2 of the programs. There's another organization I'm going to share with you called Lendistry. They do PPP loans as well as the Community Advantage Program loans through the SBA. But those are the known capital sources for companies in this early stage that I know of. And I'll send that information in an email to those attendees. It'll also be on our SBEC website.
Could I ask Brett a question? On the PPP loans, my understanding is they're generally skewed towards paying for employees. But what if you have a company where you might have 2 employees, but you have rent you have to pay and other things that are out of skew with that formula? What happens in that case? And what happens if you don't use the money? Is that put on a loan, the more formal loan? How does that work? Yeah, and no, that's a great question, Roger. And so what I want to first say is I'm gonna make general comments about this, because this whole PPP loan, I'm already seeing a smirk from Linda, because it's a touchy area, because I'm not giving a formal advice. I'm going to give you overall kind of view of how the program works. Okay, so to your point about non-payroll costs, so fundamentally 75% of the loan that's given needs to go towards payroll cost. So there is a carve out of 25% of the loan. Let's say a company gets a $100,000 loan. Well, $25,000 of that loan over the ensuing 8 weeks, because that's the time frame you have to spend it, can be used for things like you said, Roger, like utilities and rent. So there is a carve out there. And so they did set up the program in that fashion. Now,
now just to kind of, what's tricky about this and what probably led to your question, Roger, is that when the loan is calculated on the front end, they base it only on payroll costs. They base it actually basically on 10 weeks of payroll costs and benefits. But then, as I said earlier, they have you use the money over only 8 weeks. So there's a 2-week gap there. Well, that 2-week gap is that funding allotment for those 2 weeks of payroll can be allotted towards that 25% for non-payroll cost. I'm sorry if that was confusing, but that's basically, so the loan amount is determined strictly by a formula for payroll expense, but the use can be carved out between 75% payroll and non-payroll as the 25% bucket. So that's basic. So there is funding available for non-employee expense, Roger. It's just limited. And then we'll to the second part of your question, which leads kind of into this. Well, let's say I use 65% of the loan towards payroll cost, and I breach that 75% threshold. So that is what's going to trigger a portion of that loan or some, I'll just keep it vague because I don't know off the top how the formula actually works, but a portion of the loan will then become not forgiven, and that loan would be owed. And if the question is, well, how soon and what's my rate? Well, the rate is 1%. Okay, on that loan for any amount of loan that's not forgiven. Let's say in the $100,000 loan example, let's say $20,000 is not forgiven. So that $20,000, the first 6 months from the day the loan was given until 6 months being completed, there are no payments of interest or principal. So probably somewhere between month 3 and 4, or maybe 5, the business owner is going to know if they have a loan remaining or not. And so let's say that number is $20,000. Well, that $20,000 is going to be due over 18 months. So basically it's going to be due from 2 years from the inception of the loan. So since we deferred the first 6 months, you're going to owe monthly principal and interest payments on that $20,000. This is going to be amortized on a mortgage style kind of payment, but it's basically due in 18 payments. That's how it works.
Thanks, Brett.
Hopefully that helps.
We're kind of coming near the end. I want to try to open this up in as controlled manner as possible. If anyone has any specific questions, when you either raise your hand with the icon or unmute yourself, and happy to make sure your question gets answered.
Well, yeah. Any other questions?
So one did come in, and Jason, if you're still on board, if it doesn't get completely answered, let me know. But you had asked, there's a question about, and this is to you, Linda, about understanding the mandatory paid time off requirements for California for employers and employees. Is there kind of a quick 2-minute overview of what an employer needs to be aware of given what's going on?
Sure. Now, basically, the way it goes in California is the more employees you have, the more silos of time off you have to give an employee. However, if you have just one employee, this is what you have to give them. You have to give them sick pay. Depending on where your business is located, let's say like mine in Torrance, where we're not, you don't have to follow the LA City rules, you have to give them 24 hours. It doesn't matter if they work for you 10 hours a week or if they work for you 40 hours a week. You have to give them 24 hours of sick pay each year. You also have to give them time off for if they're a victim of domestic violence, so they can go to court for those proceedings. You also have to give them time off, and the sick leave is paid. The other ones are all unpaid time off. Domestic violence, I mentioned, if they're jury duty or if they have a summons that they have to appear in court, they have to show you the subpoena. You have to give them time off for that. Voting, this is one that is actually paid time off. You have to give employees 2 hours time off at the beginning or end of their shift for voting if their outside work hours do not allow them enough time to vote. So let's say that you have people working 11 and a half or 12-hour shifts, like one of my clients does. All their people work between 10 and 11 and a half hours. Well, those people don't have enough time to go and vote outside of their working hours, so they can get paid up to 2 hours. But if it's a 9 to 5, they don't get the 2 hours, but you have to give them time off if they need it. Emergency volunteer, we don't usually have that here. If they're a member of a volunteer fire department or something like that, you have to give them time off to go and perform their duties. Military leave, you have to let them take the time off to serve any military duty. And they can come back to work, but they have a certain window when they come back to apply to you. And the last thing that's mandatory for all employers is if the employee's kid is gotten in trouble in school and they have to go to classes with the kid and the parent, or if the kid is suspended, the parent has to pick the kid up, then you have to allow them time off. The only ones that are paid are sick leave and the voting time, though. But you have to give all your employees all the other time off. How fun is that?
Hey, Matt?
Yes.
I'd like to give a little shout out to Brent Dickstein here. Brent is a very bright financial person who works with the Small Business Development Center. Brett, I believe you're located at the El Camino campus of El Camino Junior College.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, I work with the South Bay SBDC, which is in the El Camino College. I also work with the Long Beach City College SBDC and the Bixel Exchange, which is the technology focused SBDC that's partnered with the LA Chamber of Commerce, and then the LA Regional Network. So we cover all 9 SBDCs. So I kind of have a little bit of a broad geographic territory, but I do focus in the South Bay as a big part of my focus.
One of the things that I've found is in working with the mentors at the SBEC over the years is, you know, the old phrase "cash is king" is real, or cash is queen, depending upon who the entrepreneur is. It's absolutely critical. So all the things that Linda and Jim and were indicating, the needs for insurance, the needs for a good legal setup, the needs for a good CPA to think about the tax efforts. A lot of our entrepreneurs, I've found, do not have that type of capital to even think about it. And I think that this is where the SBDC can play a role, because a lot of the advice that they can give is free. It's because it's paid for by the state. Is that correct, Brett?
It's actually primarily paid for by the SBA. We are like a branch of them. They're the primary funder, as well as GoBiz from the state of California is a secondary funder.
So we're going to need to kind of start winding this down. Brett, welcome. If there's any information that to get hold of you or to find out more information, put that in the chat box, and maybe it's something for another future call, another Zoom meeting. I see Roger's hand up, and then I think we're going to wind it down. So Roger, do you have any?
Yeah, two questions really more directed, I think, at Linda. There is still a lot of confusion, I think, with people as to the status of independent contractors. So is there, first part of the question is, how do part-time accountants work, or bookkeepers fit into this? And number 2, is there a source in which you can look up who qualifies as still is an independent contractor and who does not?
Sure. So the first part of your question, when you said is a part-time, I think you said bookkeeper or you said CPA. So those are two different types of.
Yeah, I'm saying more of a bookkeeper.
Okay. So that will depend on what your business is. If you have a bookkeeping business and you have a part-time bookkeeper working for your business, that person is an employee because they're doing the business of the business. If you are a chef, on the other hand, who's baking cookies and starting off your entrepreneurial company, and you hire a bookkeeper to do your books, Janie's bookkeeping service, she is most likely going to be found to be an independent contractor. There's 3 tests she has to have her own independent business, can't be doing the business of the business. In other words, a bookkeeper is not baking cookies. The business is to bake cookies. But that same bookkeeper for a bookkeeping company, that is the business of the business. So it depends on what you are doing and what they are doing for you. Somebody who's going to help you bake, if you're the cookie lady, is going to be an employee. The bookkeeper is not. Your attorney is not. Your CPA is not. So it goes with what your business is as well as what their business is.
Thank you all. Linda, I want to try to keep this as close to so everyone has their work to get back to. A couple pieces of information. Again, thank you, a big shout out, and thank you, Linda, Jim, and Brett. Invaluable information, very helpful to those who are listening now live and hopefully when they listen to it recorded. So just a great resource. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day. In the couple exciting things in the offing, on the first Wednesday of every month, the SBEC is going to be doing a workshop with Microsoft to learn a variety of different Microsoft tools. The first Wednesday is understanding the new elements of Microsoft 365, but there's about 10 different classes, workshops over the course of each first Wednesday, so keep your eyes open for that. Check LinkedIn, check our website, meet up for that information. There's also an interview series that I'm doing, kind of focusing in, doing a deeper dive into some of these entrepreneurial topics. The first one I did with Mark Haridi about crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, which hopefully will be up on our website next week. And then we have another one with Mark and Alex Bayer going into his experiences with Genius Juice. That should be great. And that's in addition to just these Wednesday meetings. So again, thank you for all that. And I'm going to pass it back to Yolanda to close things up.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope to see everyone next month. And if you have any questions regarding the SBEC, please go to our website. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks. See you later.